In this segment, I'm going to take a look at the sequence managing toolbar here on the right hand side of the workspace. And basically your sequence manager gives you a visual of the way your design sews. And so basically if you took a look at this design, now I just created this design using Creative Drawings, and I basically just created a star shape, gave it a weave fill for the center and a satin stitch border for the outside. And you can see that here. Basically, the very first thing that I see, which is labeled as 0, is actually an image. It becomes like an icon of the entire design. So it shows me what my design will look like. And then the actual embroidery elements, so the first color I have is this light blue fill of the star. And if I click on that, it actually selects the light blue fill in the workspace. And then the next color we see is the dark blue outline, and same thing, if I click on that, it will switch to selecting the dark blue outline of this design. And there's a third element to the design that you don't actually see, and if I click on that, you'll notice that it highlights the center of the embroidery design here. And basically what that means is when the design is finished sewing, so wherever this dark blue border completes sewing, it looks like it's, if I just nudge up, it looks like it probably finishes sewing somewhere around right here. And so that final element of the design is actually the machine returning back to the center of the embroidery hoop. So it's a return to hoop center. And so that's why there's always, whenever you create an embroidery design and then open it up in Wings Modular, you'll always have that at the end of your design, the return to hoop center, and you'll always have sort of the image map that shows what the entire design looks like. And in between will be the actual embroidery objects themselves. Now, also found under the Sequence Manager view, we've got a Transform tab, and we've got an Object Properties tab. Now, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Transform tab, and you'll see that basically I have 4 different options. One of them is for alignment, one of them is for size, one of them is for rotation, and one of them is for moving. Now, I guess as an example, what I'm going to do, I'll click on the Sequence Manager, and I'm just going to select the light blue area of this design. And I'm going to come over to the Transform tab, and what we'll do is we'll move that, and so you can see here I have an X distance and a Y distance. And if I wanted to, I've typed in the number 20 here just when I was practicing. I'll change that number. Let's make it 30. So I'm going to move the light blue fill 30 millimeters on the X axis, and when I say apply, you'll see that it moves the light blue fill over. I'm just going to click off. So here you can see that it's moved over my light blue fill, but it has not moved over my dark blue outline. And so that's an example of using the Transform tab. And now if I come over and look at the design, you can see here that it's changed in the Sequence Manager view. I still have what the design should look like, but then you can see where the light blue's moved over and where the dark blue is still where it originally was. And so that's what I'll do. Maybe is I'll select on that light blue fill, come back to the Transform tab, and try changing the number of the Y distance. Let's say we make it 20 millimeters and apply. And so that moved it up 20 millimeters. If I put in a negative value, so if I put in a minus 20 and apply, it'll move it back. Same thing here, if I make this 0, if I put in a minus 30, that would move it right back to where I started from. So these are mathematical ways that you can move something within your design. And I say that mathematically because, of course, when I have the light blue fill selected, I can click and drag to move it to any location that I want to visually, but not mathematically. So this is if you want to be specific about making some sort of an adjustment. Now I'm going to use undo just to put that back where it was. And I'll look at some of the other tabs. So, all right, I'll go ahead and select that light blue fill again. Just by clicking on it, I can select it. And I'll choose the rotation option now. So right now it's set at 0, and if I change it to be, let's say 45 degrees, and I say apply, it rotates that 45 degrees. You also have the ability to click clockwise, and then it will make that move the opposite direction. So I can go 45 degrees counterclockwise or clockwise, or if I turn that off, it goes the opposite direction. So basically that's another way of rotating a design. If I move over, the next one is for sizing. So horizontal scale and vertical scale. And I have the specific size. So specifically right now it's 45.4 by 47.1. And do I want to keep it proportional? In other words, if I change the size, let's just say we change the width and we say, no, we want it to be 80 millimeters. It proportionately changed the height to 82. And it tells me that's 176%. So if I say apply, it makes it bigger. Now the opposite, if I was to do not have proportional scaling put on, and then said, well, actually I only want the width to be 60, it only changes the width, does not touch the height. And if I say apply, it'll basically squish the width but leave the height exactly the way it is. So that's another way that you can adjust that. Now, and again, I can use undo once, twice to put everything back to the way it was. So with proportional scaling turned on, if I select an area with that proportional scaling turned on, if I said, well, I just want to make it 20% bigger, so I'll type in 120%, and it tells me what size it's going to make it, and when I say apply, it goes ahead and makes that adjustment. Now, it's only doing this to the one color. If I say undo, so for example, if I wanted to do the whole star, the outline and the fill, I could drag a box to select both objects. And now if I said, well, let's make it 120% bigger and say apply, it makes both the satin stitch outline and the fill 120% bigger. The next one is for alignment. And really I need to have multiple objects here to show how it works. So perhaps what I could do is just separate these two. So when I click on it, you can see it's selected, that light blue fill. I'm going to move it away. So basically here, I'm even going to move away the dark blue outline. So here you can see the elements of the design really clearly. There's the image sort of icon that was created of what the design looked like when we brought it in. And then we have the weave fill, which I've moved off to the right, and the satin outline, which I've moved off to the right and sort of dropped down a little bit. So for example, if I click on this light blue star, and now I have the ability to align this, but to align it, I really need to have two things selected. So for example, if I zoom out and then click and drag a box around both of those shapes, I've selected them both. Now if I choose to align this, and let's say basically these are like on-off buttons. So we have a horizontal and vertical alignment. So right now, if I have horizontal, the center option clicked. If I say apply, it brought those two objects to be aligned by their center. And I'll say undo. If I chose, for example, left and then said apply, it would align those two objects along the left-hand side. And so again, I'll just say undo. If I select them both again, oops, just draw a box to select them both, and say vertical, and for example, say top, and say apply, it brought them both. I'm going to say undo. I had both left and top selected. I'm going to have just top selected, which will leave the left right alone and just bring them both to line up with the same top point. So you can see here where I guess if you were creating a layout and you had brought in a design and wanted to duplicate it and then have them all nicely aligned, you could make them all aligned by the vertical top, vertical center, vertical bottom, or horizontal left, horizontal center, and horizontal right. And you'll notice a lot of these have the same option, and it says apply to duplicate. So basically if you've duplicated a part of your design and then you make a modification in one and say apply to duplicate, it will apply to the duplicate as well. So yeah, and then the other thing about this sequence manager and the transform tab, there was a third tab, and that's the object properties. And basically here, when you select on a shape, so for example if I select on the outline, it tells me that it's a satin serial, and if I select on the blue fill, it tells me that it's a step. So These are basically just telling you the types of objects that, types of stitches that could be in your objects. So yeah, that's a little bit about the sequence manager and how it works and how to use it.